Good evening and welcome everyone to our live coverage of not just the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center, but also a launch for the history books. I'm Will Robinson Smith and I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage here for Spaceflight now, broadcasting from our bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm joined tonight by Stephen Young, who is pulling double duty by running our graphics and also manning the cameras this evening. It's another busy night for SpaceX, so we're going to be toggling between a couple of things this evening. Right now on your screen, you're taking a look at the current main star for the show. This is Launch Complex 39A, where SpaceX is preparing to launch another batch of Starlink satellites. Also on tap for this evening, though, taking a look now at the International Space Station, where you see Crew Dragon Endurance docked to the ISS. But currently, Crew Dragon Endeavour is making its way back to Earth, getting ready to splash down off the coast of Florida. In fact, off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, just on the other side of Monday, which is Labor Day here in the United States. So far, things are going well per Mission Control in Houston. We're coming up in a couple of hours from one of the last big events before splashdown, that is the deorbit burn, which will last 16 minutes, 4 seconds. Set to begin at 11:24 p.m. Eastern, 03:24 UTC, again lasting 16 minutes, 4 seconds, slowing down the Crew Dragon Endeavour on its way back down before the drogue parachute deploys, preparing for the main chutes to deploy, and then a gentle splashdown in the Atlantic, again off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. That splashdown targeting 12:17 a.m. Eastern Time on September 4th. That's 04:17 UTC for our viewers around the world. The crew aboard.
Dragon, we had good intercom checks.
Copy, good intercom checks.
And we preface all this conversation about the return of the Crew 6 astronauts and cosmonauts, because right now we're patching you into the Mission Control audio between Dragon and Houston so that you can hear the happenings on both ends of SpaceX operations tonight. One bringing crew back down to Earth, the other preparing to send satellites up to orbit. Very busy night for SpaceX. As we've been told from them before, they have multiple teams running multiple ops, so there's not a conflict of concentration and everyone is able to focus on their respective missions at hand. So turning back to tonight's mission. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see the Falcon 9 rocket, tail number B1073, getting ready to support 21 Starlink satellites going up to going up to low Earth orbit in T-minus 53 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. This particular mission, Starlink group number 6-12. And for those who are avid launch viewers, you may be thinking, well, wait a second. We saw Starlink 611 launch. We saw Starlink 613 launch. Did we not do this mission already? Well, no, you're not misremembering. SpaceX just sometimes launches these missions out of numerical order, depending on a variety of factors that impact their launch calendar. So as far as the Starlink 6-12 mission, we're looking at here a T0 liftoff time of 10:47 p.m. Eastern. For those watching around the world, that's 0247 UTC, the morning of September 4th. If you'd like to support our coverage of the space program, we'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button. Click subscribe so you get those notifications, ring the bell so you know when new videos are posted and you don't miss any of our streams. And also, if you could share the stream, that would be wonderful, helping more people to find this coverage and everything else going on with the channel. And support comes in many forms and fashions. Of course, hitting the like button is a big and free way to help us out, but we certainly appreciate those like Shirley Benoit donating YouTube Super Chat donations, including fun little animations like the #1 fan pair. Really appreciate you, Shirley, supporting our coverage here this evening. You can also consider becoming a YouTube channel member here. Channel members have access to not only
SpaceX Dragon 4.010
not only 4K
is complete.
We copy complete with suit donning, and we're good to get ahead of the timeline. If you are, your go for 4.011 suit leak check.
Okay, we'll move on to suit leak check.
and I'll be periodically pausing just to not conflict my audio with what we're hearing from communications between Mission Control Houston and the 4 members aboard the Crew Dragon Endeavour making its way back down toward Earth, getting ready to splash down off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, early Monday morning. Those 4 have been on orbit for quite some time. In fact, all told, they are wrapping up a 186-day mission, with 184 days being on board the International Space Station.
SpaceX Dragon, we are ready to pressurize.
Right now you're hearing communications as...
Copy, Dragon. Standby 1, I'm looking for your go at this time to bring the cameras internal.
And you can bring the cameras internal.
Copy, standby.
Getting ready to do those suit leak checks, and as you heard, they are preparing to bring, they said, cameras internal, which means we may be able to get some views inside the Crew Dragon Endeavour shortly as it prepares to make its way back down to Earth. It's been a busy time for the 4 members of the Crew 6 mission, as they've not only been doing copious amounts of science experiments and educational outreach, but they've also...
Dragon SpaceX, we're on board with the cameras, and at this time you are go to initiate suit leak check.
Be on board, and we are going to initiate suit leak check. Thank you.
The crew has also seen the arrival and departure of 7 visiting vehicles, so a very active period of time while they've been on orbit, including some temporary crewed visitors. Of course, earlier this year in the springtime, they welcomed aboard the 4 members.
Mission Control Houston, that conversation between Endeavour Commander Steve Bowen of the SpaceX Dragon vehicle and the spacecraft communicator at the SpaceX Mission Control headquarters in Hawthorne, California, with the latest activities associated with the return of Crew 6 back to Earth, with splashdown scheduled 2 hours and 18 minutes from now at 11:17 p.m. Central Time, 12:17 a.m. Eastern Time, off the coast of Jacksonville. The 4 crew members on board Endeavour: Bowen, pilot Woody Hoberg of NASA, Sultan Al-Niyadi of the United Arab Emirates, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev are all suited up in their entry suits, ready to conduct leak checks of those suits over the next few minutes to make sure that they have a good seal on those suits prior to the deorbit burn that will begin their journey home. That burn scheduled just 1 hour and 31 minutes from now at 10:24 p.m. Central, 11:24 p.m. Eastern Time.
T-minus 47 minutes, 5 seconds remaining.
The weather off of Jacksonville in the splashdown zone for Dragon is excellent. Very light winds, clear skies, excellent conditions for the return of Crew 6 to wrap up a 186-day mission that will have seen them span 2,976 orbits of the Earth and a journey of 78.8 million statute miles. Earlier this evening, a series of so-called departure burns, essentially fine-tuning burns, to precisely put Dragon on a path toward the trajectory required for the deorbit burn that's coming up, have all been conducted flawlessly, and all of Dragon's systems are reported by the SpaceX team in Hawthorne to be in excellent shape.
Yep. T-minus 43 minutes, 2 seconds and counting to the launch of the Starlink 6-12 mission. As we get closer to liftoff, want to thank those who are helping to support our coverage. Really do appreciate all of you here. We've got about 3,700 who are joining in the live chat right now. And so to all of you who have given a thumbs up, a like to the video, really appreciate that. Helps more people find the stream. But also want to give a special appreciation to those who help support through channel membership as well as YouTube Super Chat. So thank you to T. Evans, North Carolina, one of our mods, Astro Joe, Alan Gable with a $20 super chat donation. T. Evans, North Carolina for gifting a membership. To Kellen526 for your $2 super chat donation. Patricia Martins Ferreira for becoming a channel member at the pad leader level. And just refreshing to make sure I didn't miss anything. And to Bob Pachenko, says, keep up the good work. Spaceflight Now. Your broadcasts bring hope and positivity in a world seemingly gone mad. Well, thank you, Bob, for the kind words. We like to be a source of clarity and calm in what can appear to be a topsy-turvy world at times. So thank you to all of you who are supporting our channel on that level, but also to the 4,100 of you who are joining us live. Enjoy the conversation in the live chat. I hope you all are having good chats about this mission, about Crew 6 returning to splash down off the coast of Florida shortly, and lots of others going on in space. Now T-minus 41 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. In about 3 minutes or so is when the launch director would give the results of the go, no-go poll for the start of propellant loading, which would begin at T-minus 35 minutes. However, as a programming note, SpaceX, while they have historically published their mission audio, made that accessible, they are not providing their own video coverage on YouTube for either this mission or the Crew 6 splashdown. Their coverage shifting to the social media X, formerly Twitter, for the launch, and presumably mission audio, but that is not clear if mission audio will be streamed on X or not. So we will keep tabs on that to see if that is, in fact, available as it has historically been. But assuming the launch at 10:47 p.m. Eastern, we do have the countdown clock for you. We are aware of the timeline and the visual cues, and we will keep you apprised, as we always do, of the mission milestones and how things are proceeding. But just wanted to make that programming note that you may or may not hear mission audio from SpaceX pertaining to the Starlink 6-12 mission. Depends on if and how they decide to make that public tonight. Now T-minus 39 minutes, 15 seconds. Again, we're about a minute away from, in the timeline, when the launch director would conduct the go, no-go poll, announce the results of that to begin the start of propellant load. Assuming that all goes ahead fine, you'll start to see a little bit of venting near the bottom of the Falcon 9 rocket, the first stage there, at the bottom of the transporter erector. Once the go-ahead for fueling begins at T-minus 35 minutes, RP-1, or rocket-grade kerosene, will start being loaded onto both the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time that RP-1 starts to flow onto the Falcon 9, liquid oxygen, otherwise referred to as LOX, will also start to flow aboard the first stage. T-minus 16 minutes, liquid oxygen will start flowing onto the second stage of the Falcon 9. We'll get a good visual indication of the fueling procedure before that. We see the so-called big vent coming from the strong back at the launch pad as the feed lines are chilled. T-minus 7 minutes, will begin the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines. That involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbopumps It's important because it protects the engines from thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before launch, the first stage kerosene tank will be full. And at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract begin moving away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It'll tilt back away from the Falcon 9 about 1.5 degrees and stay there until liftoff. At that point, strong back will pull back in a much more rapid fashion as the Falcon 9 leaps off the pad there. Then about 2 minutes before launch, liquid oxygen should be fully loaded onto the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 will be fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, the control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their final go for liftoff at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command will be issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 engines ignite and are healthy, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for liftoff at T0. Currently targeting 10:47 p.m. Eastern. At this point in time, given the count, the launch director should have given the go-ahead for the start of fuel loading. So propellant should be flowing onto the Falcon 9 rocket starting in about 1 minute from now. Now T-minus 34 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. Taking a look at a punched-in view of the bottom of the Falcon 9 rocket that you're seeing, the first stage taking up most of the frame here. Because SpaceX is not providing mission audio at this time, we're relying in part on visual cues that we've seen from covering numerous launches to track the process of fueling tonight. So we'll keep a close eye on the bottom part of the Falcon 9 rocket. Keep your eyes out for some vapor forming there as rocket-grade kerosene as well as super cold liquid oxygen both start flowing onto the first stage of the rocket. We'll start to see some visual evidence of that, assuming fueling is beginning, coming up in the next couple of minutes. Keep a weather eye on that. In the meantime, want to note a $5 super chat from John Wilkins saying he's watching from Nottingham, Maryland. Beautiful night for SpaceX and NASA. Well, thank you, John, for your support of our channel, and it is a beautiful night. In fact, the 45th Weather Squadron put the chance of violating weather for tonight's launch at just 10%. Put another way, that means 90% go for launch tonight, weather-wise. SpaceX, as we got closer to launch, saying the weather's gotten even better. From their latest weather briefing, they say that the weather is actually 95% go for launch tonight from Historic Launch Complex 39A here at Kennedy Space Center. Weather also good for returning a crew of astronauts and a cosmonaut back to Earth, as winds are light up in the northern part of Florida. Calm seas for splashdown coming up a little bit after midnight. If you see on your screen, a little bit of vapors forming there, as we thought they would right about this time, indicating that SpaceX is in fact fueling the Falcon 9 rocket, committing them to the launch attempt with a T0 liftoff time of 10:47 p.m. this evening. That's T minus 31 minutes, 35 seconds from now. So if for whatever reason SpaceX needs to call a hold, that will waive off their opportunity for launch this evening. And they'll have to stand down and look at attempts tomorrow. SpaceX does have 5 backup attempts if needed for Monday, September 4th. Those start at 6:59 p.m. Eastern and last until 10:39 that evening. Now T minus 30 minutes and counting to the launch of the Starlink 6-12 mission. In just a few moments, we'll go ahead and look at the trajectory for tonight's mission as we prepare that graphic and conversation. Want to thank Carla Stillman for your $10 super chat donation. Thank you, Carla. Wishing a successful launch for SpaceX and their 21 Starlink satellites. So, of course, we always wish well for those endeavoring to launch. Tonight is no different. SpaceX primed for a good mission tonight. As we just mentioned, weather looking A-OK for a liftoff in less than 30 minutes, just about 29 minutes to launch. Also want to thank SG for your $5 super chat. A couple of adorable animated hippos beside that. Thank you so much for being with us yet again on another great night for launching a batch of Starlink satellites from Launch Complex 39A. You know, these days we don't see a lot of Starlink launches from this pad. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the mission stats just a little bit later, but it's been a minute since we've seen a Starlink launch from Launch Complex 39A. There's only been one so far this year. And we'll talk about that a little more detail in just a moment. Now T minus 26 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. Did have a question from one of our channel members, Jared Brewer, asking if this one is coming back to the Cape, meaning is this going to be a return to landing zone mission? The answer is no. So for those folks who are in and around the space coast of Florida, unfortunately no sonic boom from this launch. However, depending on if you're in Florida near-ish Jacksonville or anywhere around there, there's a chance you may hear a sonic boom as the Crew Dragon Endeavour comes back through the atmosphere, getting ready to splash down off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida early tomorrow morning. So keep your eyes to the skies and your ears open because you may hear and see something pretty spectacular in the overnight hours. Hopefully where you're watching from, there are no obscuring clouds. If you go over to our Twitter/X feed, we do have a trajectory map of where the Crew Dragon capsule is going to arch over for concerning Florida. So if you are within that path or even a little bit on the periphery, odds are you may be able to see something pretty great tonight. Turning our attention back here now, though, T minus 24 minutes, 53 seconds and counting, as promised. Let's talk trajectory tonight. Taking a look at a satellite view of Launch Complex 39A. This is the pad, of course, where the Falcon 9 rocket will lift off from in 24 minutes, 36 seconds. It'll launch in a southeasterly trajectory. That secondary red line you see there is where the first stage boosters path will follow. It'll be landing on a drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean tonight. SpaceX is using the drone ship just to read the instructions. The payload fairings will jettison just a little bit downrange of where the booster lands, and they will be scooped up by one of SpaceX's recovery vessels. The two that they have on the East Coast are named Bob and Doug, after former NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the duo that flew aboard the Demo 2 mission back in May 2020. First astronaut SpaceX flew as part of the Commercial Crew program. Fun fact, one of the Crew 6 astronauts who's coming back down to Earth in the early morning hours of Monday morning. That is Crew 6 Commander Steve Bowen. Following the conclusion of his time on orbit, he has now, over his NASA career, completed 10 spacewalks, tying him for third as far as U.S. astronauts for all-time number of spacewalks. He shares that distinction with such astronauts as Michael Lopez Alegria, Bob Behnken, as we were just talking about, Peggy Whitson, who was the commander of the Axiom 2 mission, the second private astronaut mission to the International Space Station, as well as Chris Cassidy. Now T minus 22 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. See vapors continue to form on the first stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. We are just a couple of minutes away from the so-called big vent when you'll see a lot more vapors coming from the strong back. That white structure that is just to the right, a little bit in front of, from our vantage point, of the Falcon 9 rocket. T-minus 20 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. Again, in less than a minute, we should see a good visual indication of the progress of fueling the so-called big vent, starting from the transporter erector, otherwise called the strongback, in about 30 seconds, give or take. At the top of the broadcast, did mention that this is a historic day for SpaceX. Want to talk a little bit about the history of it, but before I do, you'll note on your screen the big vent is now beginning. You'll see the vapors flowing pretty much perpendicular to the Falcon 9 rocket, so got a little bit of wind out there, but certainly nothing prohibitive from launch at this point from a weather standpoint. Thanks, Stephen, for making that adjustment here. We've got a much tighter shot. You're seeing that venting happening right around the inner stage of the Falcon 9 rocket in between the first and the second stages. As you can see from the color difference between the bottom of the rocket and the top of the rocket, the first stage has a lot more soot on it. The top below the payload fairings, pristine white. That's because SpaceX does not reuse its second stage, but does refly its first stage boosters. And we'll get to this booster's history in just a little bit here. Those payload fairings also making a return to flight. As we talked about, SpaceX does use its recovery ships to scoop those up out of the Atlantic as well, refurbish them, and turn them around for flight multiple times. And that crew tower there getting some use not too long ago as SpaceX launched the Crew 7 astronauts up to the International Space Station, where they have completed a handover from the Crew 6 folks, who are now making their way back down to Earth as we speak, getting ready to splash down off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida at 12:17 a.m. Eastern Time. It's 04:17 UTC for our viewers around the world. As you're alluding to the mission stats, T-minus 18 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. This will be a historic flight for SpaceX. Also mentioned earlier in the broadcast that we don't see a whole lot of Starlink launches from Launch Complex 39A. In fact, the last time we saw that was back on February 2nd of this year for the Starlink 5-3 mission. We've seen a combination of Crew and Falcon Heavy missions, slowing down the pace of launches from this pad on the year. So far in 2023, we've only seen 9 launches from 39A, compared to 18 for all of last year. But as our countdown continues, now 17 minutes, 19 seconds away, let's take a look at where this launch will land in SpaceX history. This will be the 10th flight of Falcon 9 booster, tail number 1073. It is the 253rd Falcon 9 launch to date. It is the 59th Falcon 9 launch of 2023, but here's the big number. It is the 62nd SpaceX orbital launch of 2023. Why is that the big number? It's because in all of 2022, SpaceX launched 61 times. SpaceX now beating that record as we are just starting the month of September, and we have a lot of 2023 to go. Big milestone for SpaceX reaching this point as they are pushing towards a greater increase in launch cadence in 2024. In fact, marking the 61st launch, SpaceX founder Elon Musk took to his social media platform X, noting that SpaceX has delivered 80% or thereabouts of all Earth payload mass to orbit in 2023. The other 20% broken up roughly between China for 10%, and the rest of the world the other 10%. The goal that Mr. Musk says they are pushing towards is 10 Falcon flights in a month by the end of this year, and looking for 12 launches per month next year. An ever increasing cadence of mission launches for SpaceX, going at about once every 4 days on average so far this year. Going back to the mission stats here, this will be the 69th launch for SpaceX from this pad, Launch Complex 39A. As I mentioned, they don't use it a lot for Starlink missions, but 24 Starlink launches will have occurred by the time this mission launches. And this will be the 46th orbital launch from Cape Canaveral in 2023. Now T-minus 14 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 12 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. Fueling continues to go well on the Falcon 9 rocket here. We're about 4 minutes into start of fueling of liquid oxygen going into the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. Coming up in about 5 minutes, SpaceX will begin the chill down process for the Merlin engines. Taking a peek at the live stream, want to quickly thank folks like Cindy Narek for your $5 super chat and some cute hippo emojis. Yayla Mack, apologies if I mispronounced your name, but thank you so much for your $10 super chat with a cute little heart corgi. Refreshing the stream to make sure I haven't missed someone. Roseanne DeVasto with your $10 super chat. Thank you so much for that. Comes in with a question, isn't 39A for Artemis? Quickly to address that, no. Artemis missions will be launched from 39B, so a nearby pad but 39A is leased to SpaceX and will be used exclusively for SpaceX missions. However, I'll throw in the caveat, a little hard to see because of the lighting, but just to the right, if you look at our countdown clock, you see a blinking red dot just to the left there. It goes on and off every couple of seconds. That is the top of the launch tower that SpaceX will use to support future Starship missions. And when they launch the human landing system version of Starship, that mission, we're told, will launch from Launch Complex 39A. So, in a sense, yes, there will be Artemis supporting missions from 39A, but I think in the sense that you're thinking of, in that, is it a launch of the Space Launch System rocket, the one that we saw for the Artemis 1 mission last year? No, those will be from Launch Pad 39B. But thanks for the question. In fact, 39B is housing the mobile launcher right now, where they are doing a series of tests and upgrades, preparing it for the first crewed mission, Artemis 2, set for no earlier than November 2024. So that pad, very busy. Not as busy tonight, but last time we were out here for a launch, they were actually doing some crew access arm swing tests, so lots going on at the neighboring pad here. Now T-minus 9 minutes, 11 seconds and counting. A couple minutes away from the start of engine chill. Want to thank This Is a Burger Tank for your $5 super chat. Thank you so much. This is a Burger Tank for your support of our channel. Thank you also to Marsha Clark for your $3 super chat donation. To Martha Johnson for your $20 super chat donation, saying Godspeed Falcon 9, and looks like things are proceeding well. Martha, for a liftoff in just about 8.5 minutes from now. And thank you as well to Wendy Santiago for your $5 super chat donation. Thank you so much. And to Marsha Clark again. Now T-minus 8 minutes, 8 seconds and counting. Fueling continues to go well. We do have more than 17,000 of you joining us live. So first off, let me say thank you to all of you who are joining us this evening for the record-breaking 60 seconds launch for SpaceX in 1 year. This will beat their all-time previous record of 61 launches set back just last year. If you're just joining us, though, want to make a note of the lack of mission audio that you are hearing right now. Reason for that is, unlike normal operations, SpaceX is not providing their mission audio as they have historically via YouTube. They are also not providing video feeds for the return of the Crew 6 mission. SpaceX has said that they will be providing video on X, but have not said if mission audio would also be a part of that. And as of this point in the evening, as we are less than 7 minutes away from liftoff, SpaceX has not been providing mission audio. So that is why you're not hearing any commentary and updates from Mission Control. But we are tracking the fueling process here, as we've covered numerous Falcon 9 launches and are very familiar with the countdown procedure and what to anticipate at the various time markers. And so we will do our best to keep you informed as best we are able from what we know. That being said, we're about 6 minutes, 13 seconds from liftoff. We are approaching the point at which the first stage kerosene tank should be completely full. RP1 coming up in about T-minus 4.5 minutes. We'll see those clamp arms open at the base of the Falcon 9's payload fairings there. You'll see the strong back begin to tilt away from the Falcon 9. Now T minus 4 minutes, 44 seconds and counting. Talked a little bit about the history of where this mission will fall for SpaceX overall. Also do see the ending of the big vent, so things continue to proceed well with the fueling operations. Just want to note that briefly. This will be the 10th flight of this particular Falcon 9 first stage booster, so with a few minutes left in the count, let's quickly run down its history. This booster first launched back on May 14th, 2022 on its very first Starlink mission, that being 4-15, sending up 53 Starlink version 1.5 satellites to orbit. Next up was a C-band communications satellite for the company SES that launched on June 29th of 22. That was followed up by a pair of Starlink missions, the first on August 10th, the second on the 24th of September. Next up for this booster was the first lunar supporting mission, the launch of the Hakuto R mission lander for the company iSpace in Japan that launched on December 11th. Launch went off as planned, but unfortunately that lander crash landed on the moon, starting a challenging year for lunar missions for both Japan-based iSpace as well as Roscosmos with the failure of its Luna 25 mission.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
T minus 2 minutes, 51 seconds and counting. SpaceX is now offering video and audio on X, so now we will start to hear a little bit from Mission Control. So if you hear me pause to let them speak, that was because we were just listening into updates from SpaceX Mission Control. Going quickly through the rest of this. Next mission for this booster was February 7th for the Amazonas Nexus mission. It's a Spanish communications satellite for Hispasat. That was followed up by a Cargo Dragon mission to the space station, Commercial Resupply Services, or CRS-27, on March 15th. And finally, missions 8 and 9 were 2 more Starlink missions on April 19th and June 12th. Now T minus 2 minutes to launch. In about 15 or so seconds, we should hear a call out that the liquid oxygen
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
on stage 2 is complete. You just heard that good call out. And as we approach the final minute of the count, the flight computers will be taking control as stage 1 and 2 are pressurized for flight. Onboard computer will perform checks of the first stage propulsion system.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And with 30 seconds left in the count, SpaceX launch teams are go for launch, coming up to the last 20 seconds of the mission before liftoff. Coming up on the final count. Here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Enter ignition. And liftoff. Liftoff of the 62nd mission for SpaceX of the year, Starlink 6-12, a record-breaking launch for the company. A bright and brilliant liftoff on a clear Florida night as the Falcon 9 rocket streaks up into the night sky. Let's listen in. Now 1 minute into the launch. Some great views from our tracking cam here tonight, being manned by Stephen Young. Switching viewpoints for a moment, this is an onboard view from the Falcon 9 first stage. Is the vehicle now passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic stress on the vehicle. Hear that call out for MVAC chill. Getting ready to thermally condition the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage, preparing it for ignition coming up momentarily. Now coming up on 2 minutes into flight. We're approaching the point called MECO, or main engine cutoff. The Merlin engines will shut down. That will be followed by stage separation and ignition of the upper stage, that Merlin vacuum engine. That'll be followed shortly thereafter by the jettison of those two payload fairing halves. Now 2 minutes, 25 seconds into flight. See here MECO on your screen. Stage separation coming up. We see here on a bit of a delay the views from the Falcon 9 rocket. And you see on the right-hand side of your screen a good view of the Sunshine State just beneath that MVAC engine as it came roaring to life. Now 2 minutes, 56 seconds into flight. Falcon 9 first stage on the left-hand side of your screen there. The hypersonic grid fins deploying. Taking a look back at our tracking camera with a clear night, you can see a great view. Right now you're taking a look at the second stage of the Falcon 9 there. Taking a look now. Payload separation, you see the Starlink V2 mini satellites now for the first time in their flight being exposed to the vacuum of space. Now 3 minutes 33 seconds into flight. Still getting some great views from our tracking camera here. As we're getting ready to come up on the entry burn. That first stage entry burn set to start at T plus 6 minutes 4 seconds. Right now, the light that you're seeing at the center of your screen, that is still a clear shot of that Merlin vacuum engine continuing on its burn. the benefits of launching on a clear night. You can still see that pin dot of that lone Merlin vacuum engine. Now 4 minutes, 24 seconds into flight. The Falcon 9 first stage continuing to accelerate, traveling at a speed of about 6,900 kilometers per hour. Now reached its highest point, starting to arc down, make its way back down to Earth. Again, we'll start the entry burn in just about a minute and a few seconds from now. T plus 6 minutes, 4 seconds. A bit faint, but you can still see the Merlin vacuum engine there on our tracking cameras. That little dot at the center of your screen on the right-hand side. Here's an onboard view from the second stage on the right-hand side of your screen. That Merlin vacuum engine continuing its burn. On the left-hand side of your screen, the Falcon 9 first stage, tail number 1073, making its way back down toward the drone ship. Just read the instructions, stationed out in the Atlantic Ocean. Again, this booster making its 10th flight, and you see that entry burn beginning now. This burn will last about 20 or so seconds. Now T plus 6 minutes, 41 seconds into flight. The entry burn complete. The next big milestone coming up is the landing burn at T plus 8 minutes. So in just a little bit over a minute now, we'll see that entry burn beginning. Excuse me, the landing burn beginning. And things continue to move smoothly on both stages of the Falcon 9 this evening as SpaceX notches its 62nd orbital launch of the year, breaking its record of 61 launches it completed in calendar year 2022. Now coming up on the start of the landing burn in less than 30 seconds. T plus 8 minutes, stage 1 transonic as we're approaching the start of the landing burn from our timeline. Would begun by now. SpaceX's feed on a little bit of a delay.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance.
And you see the start of that landing burn. Making its way now down toward the drone ship. Just read the instructions. This booster aiming for its 10th landing.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
And a little bit of moisture on the drone ship's camera there, but you can see...
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Got a good landing of that Falcon 9 first stage, tail number 1073. Now returned down to the drone ship.
MVAC shut down.
now T plus 9 minutes, 30 seconds and counting up into the mission. At this point, we would typically continue to keep track with the mission as it continues to go on, showing you the trajectory. But as we mentioned earlier on the broadcast, because SpaceX has chosen not to provide either its mission audio or the trajectory map as the second stage continues on toward the deployment of the Starlink satellites in an hour and 14 minutes from now. Apologies for the little technical snafu there. We're working on bringing you some great images from one of our photographers, Michael Kane, who has been out doing some photography covering this mission for us out in the field. He's working on bringing the video. Also want to make sure to bring you some great stills, and excited to pull this up for you momentarily. And as we are just a few days away from seeing that supermoon, the blue moon, we did have a unique opportunity with this launch, seeing this Falcon 9 rocket passing in front of not quite a full moon, but just a stellar shot there. Again, this coming from one of our photographers, Michael Kane. Hat tip to you, sir, for this one. Excellent as always. T plus 11 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. Again, normally we would be continuing on with our coverage of the Starlink 6-12 mission, but again, because SpaceX is choosing not to provide either mission audio or trajectory data for the second stage of the Falcon 9 and progress on its mission towards deployment, unfortunately, we are unable to do so. So we are going to wrap up our coverage this evening, but want to sincerely thank all of you who have joined us tonight and all of those who have hit the like button, shared the stream, contributed through Super Chat donations, and to our newest channel members. Thank you to all of you who have been a part of this mission tonight. And for those of you who are, excuse me, looking forward to even more space coverage and action this evening, if you didn't quite get your fill with the 60-second launch from SpaceX tonight, we do have one more bit of intrigue on the docket. Again, you're looking live at Launch Complex 39A, where all of the crew missions for SpaceX launch from, and tonight, in the overnight hours, we'll be seeing one of the crews return after launching off this pad, spending 168 days on orbit. Excuse me, 186 days in total for their mission of Crew 6. 184 days were spent on board the International Space Station. They are making their return now to splash down off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. That coming up at 12:17 a.m. Eastern Time, 04:17 UTC. Before that, they will have one last big deorbit burn that will last 16 minutes, 4 seconds, preparing them for splashdown. That burn coming up at 11:24 p.m. Eastern, 03:24 UTC. If you take a look at our latest post on X, we do have the map of the trajectory for the SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft Endeavour. So if you happen to be in Florida or Georgia, and from your vantage point you don't have obscuring clouds, you may be able to see the Dragon re-enter, get ready to splash down as it streaks across the sky. If you'd like to continue to follow the return of Crew 6, suggest you hop over to our other live stream currently in progress over on Launchpad Live right here on our YouTube channel. We'll continue to bring you audio from Mission Control over there as we wrap up things on this live stream. Again, because SpaceX is not providing mission audio or trajectory data for the for the Starlink 6-12 mission, we're going to wrap things up here and turn our attention to the return of 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut from the International Space Station. They docked, this morning at 7:05 a.m. and are getting ready to return on the start of Labor Day. So for now, on this stream, for all of us here at Spaceflight now, for Stephen Young and for Michael Kane, I'm Will Robinson-Smith. Thank you so much for joining us here. Again, we hope to see you over at Launchpad Live as we continue our coverage this evening and into the early morning hours of the return of Crew 6. And for those like Deborah Gack, one of our newest channel members, thank you, Deborah, for joining us. You can enjoy live 4K streams of missions launching from Florida as they happen. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, become a channel member if you're able to. The support is much appreciated. Thank you as always for being with us for our live coverage, and we will see you next time.